So girl, see, I got your money, $100 bill, y'all. If you were from where I'm from, then you would know that I gotta get mine in a big place.
All right, I love the walkout music. That was fun. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. My name is Elex Michaelson. I'm with Fox 11 Los Angeles. It's my honor to be here. Most importantly, I'm an LA native, and this story, like so many people in here, is so personal. Great to be joined. This panel doesn't really need any introductions. We've got the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, Evan Spiegel, founder and CEO of Snapchat, Cinny, Kennard, the head of the Annenberg Foundation, and Lindsey Horvath, LA County Supervisor, who represents the Palisades. First off, can you give yourselves a round of applause for being here and for caring about this issue? You know, the Milken Global Conference often deals with national and global issues, doesn't often deal with Los Angeles issues, but this story really became a global issue. And in January, it was the biggest story in the world. We heard from people all over the world, but as we know, as the media does, people's attention spans are short, people move on, and the truth is the need is more now than it was in January. And so it's important that rooms like this and those watching online as well, remember that we still need help in this community. And part of what we're going to do today is talk about how everybody here can join in that process of helping, where we go from here, maybe some of the lessons learned about what went right and what went wrong, and then a call to action to get everybody involved moving forward. So before we get into the politics of it and some of the bureaucracy and all the rest of it, I want to talk about the real personal story here. And Evan Spiegel, you are a son of the Palisades. Snapchat is a product of the Palisades. Can you talk for a moment about what happened for you on January 7th, and what that moment has meant to you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me and for bringing this group together. Thanks for all of your care and consideration for the folks who've been impacted by this just terrible set of wildfires. I think for me, the thing that really stands out in my mind was just at the speed at which the fire moved. Our office actually looks out on those beautiful Santa Monica mountains. Growing up, you know, we lived on the edge of this wildland landscape, so we were evacuated growing up. We evacuated with our kids when they were a bit older. Our kids were, Dad, is that the fire? Yeah, that's the fire, get in the car. And so, you know, for me, it was something that we had lived with, and it was impossible to imagine it burning at the scale that I think we saw, you know, during these LA wildfires. So I was looking out the office window, I saw the helicopters. I'm sure they're going to get a handle on this. I'll check back in a couple of hours. And by then, you know, just the number of friends, family members who needed a home, needed a place to stay, needed help, was just extraordinary and cascaded from there. So I just want to thank, you know, all of the folks who really stepped up, who continue to step up and help folks who are still dealing with housing insecurity, who are dealing with really, really difficult financial circumstances, who've lost their homes and the neighborhoods they've grown up with. Thank you for all the work you're doing.
Can you talk about, though, what the Palisades means to you? And how instrumental that community has been in the incredible success you've had.
Well, the Palisades, like Altadena, like Malibu, these are very tight-knit communities. And I grew up in a community where you'd skateboard or scooter along the sidewalks, go up to the Palisades Rec Center and hang out with your friends. And I think there was a real sense of safety that folks had in the Palisades as well that helped this community grow, and a really multi-generational community. My mom first and dad first bought their home there more than 30 years ago, and the Palisades has transformed since then. Of course, in my dad's house, that's where we started Snapchat. It wasn't even called Snapchat at the time. It was called Peekaboo. I think we were up to about 9 people living in my dad's house in the living room in the basement by the time my dad kicked us out of there to get a real office. But it's just such a special and unique community. And I think one of the things that's been so inspiring to me is to see the way that these communities across LA, including Altadena, including the Palisades, Malibu, Pasadena, have actually come together through this period of time to support one another, you know, in the efforts to rebuild and to move forward.
Mayor Bass, where are we at right now? Give us a bit of a brief status update.
Sure. Well, 120 days or so. The rebuilding has been going very fast, and the first phase and the second phase is the debris clearing and the removal of the hazardous waste. And that has been going at lightning speed. And so to me, the most important thing to do is to get people back home as fast as possible and to remove any part of the bureaucracy that would hinder people from getting back. And so we opened up a disaster recovery center. We've seen over 9,000 people come through there. We opened up a one-stop rebuilding center. We've had hundreds of folks go through there. We issued our first permits to rebuild within 2 months. We have about 200 people in the pipeline now. One of the big issues is the fees, right, Evan, with the fees that people have to pay. And so we're in the process of waiving the fees, anything and everything that we can do to get people back home as fast as possible. And even saying that, if you've lost your home, even though things are going fast, it's still not fast enough because it's not just losing a structure. You're losing memories, you're losing history. And then I think about, I met with a group of high school students, and I felt so bad for them. They were from Pali and also Altadena, because that was the same group of young people whose education was disrupted just a few years ago over COVID. So they missed their middle school graduation and now might miss their high school graduation. Although I was there a week ago with Pali High, has relocated, and to see the school reopen, and the students gave me a tour. And to me, that's bringing the sense of community back, because that's also what's lost.
Are you satisfied with the permitting process? Do you think that's moving fast enough? And is there ways that technology could maybe be used to make it go faster?
And we're looking at that right now. We're looking at a couple of things. Number one, the use of artificial intelligence hopefully can speed it up, because it's one thing to say that we have 200 permits in the pipeline, but there's thousands. And so right now, over 1,100 lots have been cleared where people can start rebuilding, but it's obviously an individual decision as to when you actually start that process. Using self-certification so that you don't have to go through, so many hoops. So to me, the permitting process can always be improved. And then what we're learning in this time period, if we use artificial intelligence and that helps, if we use the self-certification, then maybe it can be applied to building in the city, period. Because building in Los Angeles is a challenge, period. And so to me, every speed bump, every barrier, we want to see how we remove it. And because this is an emergency, and I issued an emergency declaration immediately, it allows me to have additional authority so that I can expedite and do anything that we can to get people building as soon as possible.
And so what's the timeline to get the AI stuff going?
The AI stuff, the plan for that right now, it should be going in the next couple of months.
Okay. Supervisor Horvath, from a county perspective, you not only oversee the Palisades, also oversee Altadena, although that's Supervisor Barger's district. You're still part of the county. What's the status update? Where are you at? What are you proudest of? What are your biggest challenges?
Well, we overlap in the city of Los Angeles and the Palisades, but in addition, in my district, we have the areas of Sunset Mesa and Topanga, which are unincorporated areas where we're leading the effort on all fronts. We have the city of Malibu, of course.
Who gets, unfortunately, isn't talked about enough. Malibu got really hard hit.
There's a lot of work that's happening there, and a lot of strife that's happening largely because of the impacts on the PCH. And I think we're feeling those infrastructure challenges. And so one of the things that we did was initiate a Blue Ribbon Commission in partnership with UCLA to call upon the expertise in the region. When there are problems that present themselves to us, it's not only government that should be answering the call. We have to call upon the expertise in the community to say, how do we harness all of the energy and the commitment to a full recovery that everyone wants to bring to the table, and make sure that we're giving a seat at the table to people who might not have my seat of power, but certainly have a lot to offer. And so we are already seeing their recommendations come to light that will benefit not only the unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County, but our entire region. And I think that was inspired by the work that we did in partnership with our federal government, as the mayor mentioned. The county was the lead agency coordinating all of us on that debris removal process. And so we have led the fastest debris removal process in history, which has been a wild success. And I think that set the bar of expectation for what the next phase needs to look like. We can't go back to the bureaucracy of the past that allows things to move slowly. We have to take the lessons learned from emergency and make sure that we are applying them going forward. I think that's the expectation now.
So what does that mean exactly? So what regulations are going to be cut going forward? And you're not only talking about in emergency areas, you're talking about everywhere, right?
I am. The Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations apply not only to the fire burn footprint areas, but really have a vision for what our entire region will look like in terms of a resilient and fire-safe recovery. But I want to be clear, some things shouldn't be cut. And we're hearing that from the insurance industry, for example, that if we cut regulation, it lets them off the hook. It allows them to not pay for the things that their customers are expecting they're going to show up for them for in the recovery process. So we're actually learning that some of that accelerated, red tape cutting that everybody loves to talk about, myself included, could backfire if we aren't thoughtful. And that's why the Blue Ribbon Commission has been so critical, is to really intersectionally look at what does it mean to safely and smartly recover. And so we're thinking about not only policies, but practices. How do we make sure that we're thinking about affordability and investment and leveraging scale, bringing all of our communities together? How do we make sure that insurability going forward is a possibility, because insurability is affordability, and we need to make sure that people know that they're actually going to be insured should they rebuild. These are all questions that people are asking that we have to help them answer, and that's the role that government should be playing, is getting bureaucracy out of the way to make sure that we have a smart and safe recovery.
But is there a specific change that's coming?
Yes, so there are short-term recommendations that just came out this week, ranging from what some of the resilient best practices, the undergrounding, the home hardening, and the techniques that have been talked about. There's also infrastructure requirements. I'm personally passionate about our investment in water. You think it's bad that we have 88 cities in the Los Angeles County region to navigate. We have more than 200 water agencies to coordinate how we deliver water throughout this region. So we have to get out of our own way, and I think this opportunity allows us to re-envision and reimagine, how do we consolidate, how do we move quickly, how do we leverage the lessons learned and make sure that some of those water agencies, for example, have the support that they need.
Speaking of questions, you see that QR code that is there. If you have questions towards the end of this, I'll be reading some of them off. They'll be submitted here to this iPad here. So feel free to chime in with that. Cindy, let's go to you, because a big part of this is a public-private partnership. And at the Annenberg Foundation, you have been leading the way for many years on this, which gave you experience for this moment. Can you talk about some of the work you've done specifically also with Fire Aid? We saw this big concert, all over the world, all the biggest performers, $100 million. Where are we at with that money?
Yeah, thanks so much, and I'm just so enthused by the amount of people that are in this room, and especially people that aren't from Los Angeles, because I want to punctuate what everybody said, and I've heard it throughout the day. This is a uniquely Los Angeles story of a remarkable response. We figure out now, and with a rough estimate, that $800 million has been raised 17 weeks. We're only, let's level set here. We're only 17 weeks, not even
we can apply for that. $800 million
from that tragedy.
They're waiting for $1 billion.
And I see all my colleagues, Miguel Santana from California Community Foundation, working with Evan. The other great story that's happening within philanthropic sectors in this city is we are coordinated. And we are facing off every single day, problem by problem, challenge by challenge. And we are together in this. We are innovating. The mayor talked about AI. That came as a result of philanthropic dollars. Mayor, as you know, Archistar, an application that's used in Memphis, Tennessee, and Vancouver, maybe could be used to speed our permitting by 30 days, actually get through AI, a permit within 30 days. This is uniquely Los Angeles. We are going to try this. The mayor has signed on to it. You've signed on to it as Board of Supervisors. So a remarkable story of Fire Aid as well. I mean, what other city in the world within 24 hours could think of a concert and leveraging the creativity of this extraordinary community, calling musicians together. Irving and Shelley Azoff deserve a congressional medal for what they pulled off, putting that concert up, working with Steve Ballmer and Connie Ballmer, who have come into this community with their philanthropy and lifted up a concert that raised $100 million in 24 hours. And it's still streaming, everybody, on Netflix. So please tune in and give us more money for the city. So this has been amazing. I then put up a foundation for Fire Aid composed of 5 different foundations in Los Angeles. We worked together and within 3 weeks pushed out $50 million across people that needed food, people that needed housing. Folks, people are still suffering in need of basic needs in our community. This is not a good situation still. There's an arc to these things. We are not in the rebuild yet. I think we all know in this ground game, Mayor, you know, Lindsey, you know, we are still in the arc of recovery right now. And the rebuild's gonna come and it's gonna be great. The Army Corps of Engineers is gonna leave at the end of July, and then we are gonna be on our own. One thing I just wanna say, and I think it's so important to surface, our governor has asked for $39 billion for this community. We
From the
need
federal government.
that money.
Yeah.
Yes, because philanthropy can step up and we can all be together in this, and we're locking arms here, but at some point, we need that money.
So that's almost $40 billion that he's asked from the federal government. Right now, the federal government has given a whole lot of money, and there has been good coordination. It's interesting. The Trump administration, the city of Los Angeles, the state of California seem to be working well together. This is with money that Biden had allocated, right? While we bring it up, what do we think about this money? Do we think we're going to get it? I mean, as a former member of Congress.
Well, I certainly hope we are going to get it, but I do have to say that Biden allowed for 100% reimbursement with FEMA, and that's something that has never happened before. The Trump administration has continued that. And if I think about the resources that were given for the Army Corps of Engineers, for FEMA, from the EPA, that has allowed us to be in the position that the supervisor mentioned, to have the fastest cleanup in California history. We want that to continue. So we're going to go, all forces. The governor called us together last week, be going to D.C. and advocate for that. I do think that we will be able to get the resources that we need.
So is the message, thank you, President Trump?
The message is thank you. Listen, give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, we love hearing that. Evan, we got to give you some credit as well, because you brought people together, including Miguel Santana, who's in the front here, for the Department of Angels, which is a philanthropic effort to tackle some of these issues. Talk to people about what that is and how it's helping.
I think Miguel really deserves the credit because we were busy basically running a hotel for our friends and family, and a couple days into the fire, Miguel texted me, was like, hey, I think we got to do something to help out here. And I was like, you are right, you are. We got to dig in here and help out. And we got to know each other in the committee for Greater LA, worked through some of the challenges around COVID. And so we had a great working relationship prior, and we started really just reaching out to our friends and family who had been impacted across the community. And the thing that we were hearing was that folks had been displaced, that they had lost all of their community gathering places or places of worship, schools, you name it, and that they wanted to be a part of the rebuilding process, but it was now going to be harder than ever to work together as a group on perhaps the greatest group project of their lives. And so the opportunity that we saw was to provide staffing, to provide project management support and assistance, to fund community organizers and community groups, of which I believe so far we've funded and partnered with 12 across Altadena, the Palisades, and Malibu, and to really build a block captain infrastructure so that block by block we can get to 100% coverage of folks who have been impacted by the fire, to make sure we're connected with them, that we can help them with the rebuilding process, most importantly, that we can listen to them so that this is a community-driven recovery and that their desires, their needs are centered in the rebuilding process. Of course, we're just weeks into this. What I agree with Cinny is just the beginning of this recovery process. And the other commitment that we really wanted to make to the community was that we are here for the long term. We know this is going to take a long time, and we wanted to build an organization that could support the community over the long term, 10 years or more, if that's what it takes.
And that's a multi-pronged approach with trying to work with the government and public-private partnerships and all of that as well.
You know what, can I just say one thing?
Sure.
I think what Evan and his team and Miguel did so brilliantly right at the beginning of the fire was bring the people from Maui, bring the people from the Northern California fires into our community, and they have instructed us, they have informed us, they have stayed with us day by day to say, this is what's going to happen next. This is what's going to happen next. I mean, they didn't have the scale of the fire that we have, as the mayor knows and the supervisor knows. But it was so instructive to bring those people into this community.
What did you learn from them? What was the biggest lesson?
I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah.
Besides pushing money out and feeding people, the Los Angeles citizens need symbols of hope. And we were taught to give them symbols of hope. So during Fire Aid's funding, that first tranche of $50 million, we gave enough money to reopen Loma Alta Park. 7 parks in Altadena burned to the ground. And they need a park reopened. They will reopen May 17th in Altadena, Loma Alta Park, thanks to Fire Aid, thanks to the Dodgers Foundation, thanks to all of us coordinating. We did the same thing in the Palisades with the playground. The kids couldn't go with their parents to the FEMA center because the playground was contaminated, gave to that. So give people a symbol of hope of this tragedy.
What gives you hope?
Well, what gives me hope is the community spirit, the way the entire city and frankly the region came together. Absolutely, and across jurisdiction, the private sector, the public sector. But I want to build on what Cinny was saying in terms of the community spaces. To me, that was very important because the city actually owns the library, the playground, and the rec center. And so most of the clearing would have happened in just the residential area, but we also thought it was really important for that to be rebuilt, for there to be a temporary building there for the library, because the individual families will rebuild as they can. But that sense of community and gathering place we thought was very, very important. So one of the things that we did was we pushed the Army Corps of Engineers to consider that, because technically they would have just focused on the housing. But it is really important, bring back that sense of spirit and community gathering.
I think an important aspect of that too is the care piece. And you know, in the county, in addition to infrastructure, which we talk a lot about in terms of what resilient recovery looks like, we also have to talk about the human side. And we invested, for example, in care camps where our young people were able to go through our Department of Parks and Recreation in partnership with arts to have healing spaces for our young people to come together. And I thought that was especially important because I remember from the very first town hall we had for debris removal, there was a family that came up from Malibu who had just lost everything, a mother, a father, and 2 daughters. And the youngest daughter spoke to me first and said, "Do you think it's possible there will be another fire now that I'm in a new home? And what will you do to protect us?" And her older sister, who was in high school, was an advocate for the environment, was talking about what we needed to do to be investing in climate safety and our future and protecting young people and having a resilient future. Of course, their father was worried about what insurance coverage would look like and what a home rebuild would look like, and their mother was asking what the school recovery would look like and would their children have a school to come back to. And so I feel like that family really lives with me because the weight of that initial question and then the way that the whole family embodied all of those human elements of what recovery has to look like if we can really consider it a success. It's not enough to put somebody back into their house if they don't have a grocery store to go get food, or to have a school to go get education, or to have their places of worship come back. And so I really think about that human element, and I think that's a piece that the county also does uniquely well. We showed up with mental health services. We showed up with public health and health services to be able to refill people's prescriptions. All of those human things that we so take for granted until this time of emergency.
I'm looking at a lot of the questions that you all are submitting, which are very pointed, and so I'm getting a sense of where some of this room is. So I want to ask some of the accountability questions to get a sense of potentially what went wrong and how do we learn from that. Mayor Bass, are you satisfied with the performance of the LADWP? There's been a lot of questions about Janice Quinones, who's making over $700,000 a year. Do you think that she did a good job, and should she continue in that job?
Well, I certainly would not sit here and say she shouldn't continue in her job. But the issue with the DWP actually is the DWP and the fire department as well. So one of the big issues was the reservoir and the fact that the reservoir was empty. The reservoir was empty. It was not a reservoir, well, it was a reservoir for drinking water. So it was covered. And the problem was there was a tear in the cover. And so the state ordered it to be empty and closed, and it hadn't been finished in time. The other issue that overlaps with the fire department were the fire hydrants. Right. And there is a lot of evaluation and reporting that we need to do to fix that as well. So the way it is done now is that the fire department essentially inspects the fire hydrants, and then they give the information over to the DWP, and the DWP then repairs them. That information was not received. And so that was a problem on the fire department. But the issue I would raise is, why do we even do it that way? And so I think that we have to take the lessons from this tragedy to figure out how we strengthen all of our systems, and most notably the emergency management department as well as the fire department, both of those.
But do you understand how some people see that job performance maybe not meriting $750,000? That's more than you make. That's more than you make.
Yeah, but let me just say that the DWP is the nation's largest utility. And if you compare our utility to Omaha, Nebraska, where the salary was around the same, a small town, I mean, a big town maybe in Nebraska, but small compared to Los Angeles. And so to me, I want to get the best talent around the nation. And we did a national search, and that's what it took. She took a significant pay cut to come to work for Los Angeles.
Wow. Good for I guess I'm in the wrong line of work. So what? That's the pay cut. We know that the fire chief was fired. Are there more to come? Is there anybody else that you think should be held accountable for what happened here?
Yeah, I think that there are a number of people that should be held accountable, and we're in the process of doing that. The fire chief, I had to release her for her response, which I think has been well documented. The fact that 1,000 firefighters were sent home that could have been on duty. The fact that fire engines were idle that could have been in use, and several other weaknesses that happened there.
So more people, it sounds like, will be losing their jobs.
Well, it is possible. It is possible because you know that there are investigations that are underway.
Yeah. And when are we going to get the results of those investigations?
I think we're probably a couple of months away still. However, the governor has an investigation on the fire department, and that's probably several months away.
There's a lot of questions coming in about the issue of permitting. One of them for you, Supervisor Horvath, saying that your office launched a wildfire recovery portal promising strong and resilient rebuilding. How many county-level permits have been issued to date? How many remain in the queue? And when will you publish a live dashboard tracking all that?
I don't know the number off the top of my head that have been issued. I know that we are already issuing permits in the county. The point is, how do we make sure that we're doing so responsibly and quickly? We are also deploying some of the technology that's already been discussed. The county is a variety of areas. It's Altadena, it's Sunset Mesa. We will be supporting aspects of the rebuild in Malibu, potentially in the city if it's needed. So the county is going to be not only rebuilding in the areas where we are unincorporated and the lead agency, but we'll be offering that support throughout the region. So all of that's going to be stood up to support all of those efforts. And I think that's sort of what's unique about the county. We're not only the city responsibilities of, streets and sidewalks for the unincorporated communities, we're also all of the regional infrastructure, the water infrastructure. We're also working in supporting the city of Malibu. They have nearly 300 homes on the coast that were operating on septic systems. And so I don't think they're going to be bringing back 300 homes on septic systems. So that's a different kind of infrastructure consideration that they have to make, and they're not going to be able to do that by themselves. They're already talking to, reaching out individual council members to me saying, what's the county going to do? When in reality, Malibu made a decision several years ago. They didn't want to build a sewer system, and now they might want one. So we have a lot of complex considerations we have from the unincorporated areas to unincorporated cities we will support.
Cinny, you talked about the $50 million that you put out. That means you've got at least $50 million more in the bank. What's that next $50 million go to?
So we're actually under consideration right now is another 25, which we're hoping will go out in the next week or so. Look, you know, our colleagues at the California Community Foundation did a survey. 60% of the participants say they still need basic needs. They still need, Mayor, you know this, they need food. I have one woman who's moved 5 different times and she didn't even have luggage. I mean, people are still suffering in this community. So a lot of that is there. The other part of it is kind of looking forward. This is the next 25. The other part of it, and this is something the Department of Angels has been great on, as well as our friends at Kane Foundation, working on the study of the soil and the air and the water, because people are living in fear now. I'm going back, but I'm going back to a contaminated place to get sick. So we're going to go ahead and fund, as the Department of Angels has, and as has Kane Foundation, been a leader on this. I mean, this is the coordination that's going on here. It's great. Paying scientists to come into our community, which you have done, to study. Kane Foundation putting USC, UCLA, some of our universities together that are doing soil testing for free for our citizens. That's going on here in Los Angeles. So that's part of the next tranche that we're looking at, like sort of thinking about what's preparing people to rebuild. Not rebuild, we're not there yet, you know, as a community. And then there's another last 25.
Evan, let's talk about that work from the Department of Angels, because you guys have been leading the way on health surveys from the beginning, a 10-year process of looking at the soil samples and the health effects. What are you seeing so far in terms of the results?
Yeah, absolutely. We thought it was really important to bring experts to the table. You know, this is important, of course, in terms of health. It's also important in things like insurance, where we've tried to facilitate, we are facilitating an insurance working group, because there's actually some intersections as well between the soil testing and, for example, underwriting, which is something that we're currently working on. If you want more detailed reporting on what the team has found so far, go to lafirehealth.org. It's, I think, a really great reflection of team science. These are folks from Stanford, Harvard, USC, UT Austin, UC Davis. Some of the best folks across the country have committed to study this for the next decade to understand the long-term health consequences and to help people make the right choices for themselves and their families so that they can feel safe returning. So there's a ton of great information there. There's lots of webinars. And I think what's been really helpful is on these critical issues like soil testing, being able to bring those experts to the table and help consult them as we're thinking about next steps for the community.
How is that something you're thinking about, the health aspect of it, and balancing the need and want to rebuild quickly and this fear that people could go home and get sick?
Absolutely. That's a big concern as to what's happening in the Palisades. So far from what I have seen, and individuals have taken it upon themselves to do testing, but so far it seems like it hasn't been as extensive in the Palisades as it was in Altadena, for example. But there is a population that we haven't talked about yet, and that is the population of people who worked in the homes, on the properties, or also in the local businesses, because there were a couple hundred businesses in the Palisades. And so that's another example of the partnership with philanthropy, California Community Foundation, in terms of supporting nonprofits to be in. We opened up 4 impacted worker centers. So people, regardless of what fire they might have been impacted by, they could go to the center, they could get financial assistance. And many of the people that worked on the properties and in the homes were also small business people. If you were a gardener, if you had 5 or 6 homes, you had employees, you're a business person. And so making sure that they get the assistance, and making sure that they get the assistance regardless of their immigration status.
And to that point, let's talk a bit about Altadena, Supervisor, because the population in the Palisades and Altadena are just very different. And very different kind of people. And for a lot of folks, especially in Altadena, in these historically black neighborhoods, there had generational wealth, and that wealth was all wiped out in this fire. How are you as the county thinking sort of differently about that population and what can be done to help them?
Well, I've been part of conversations that have been Black community led, and to hear directly from community members about exactly what they want government to be showing up with, because we can come up with all kinds of ideas that we think solve problems, and then they'll say, but I need help with this one specific thing, and nobody's doing this thing for me. And so the way that they are showing up to help us understand specifically from the experience of passing down homes but not transferring titles and the complication that that has meant and what that loss of generational wealth will look like. How we are making sure that we are equitably investing in a recovery, and that's something actually the county intentionally does when we think about how we invest in our supports. Department of Economic Opportunity in the county has been the place where we've stood up funds to invest in individual residents, in small businesses, and in the workers themselves. And we have intentionally invested those funds with an equity lens to make sure that those who are most at risk and most vulnerable in this recovery process are centered in that recovery work. So their voices are leading that charge. And when we were thinking about what does equity actually mean in that application, we wanted to make sure that home ownership in this historically Black community wasn't the disqualifier for them to also get the kinds of support that to which they should be entitled. So we have been really thinking from a complex place about how we support communities. There are still some things that need to be leveraged. There was recently, conversation around some of the housing solutions longer term, and how do we make sure that we are leveraging all options because there are some people who are going to be displaced for a longer period of time. So there are a lot of different considerations depending on the communities that you're looking at. So you really have to listen to what it is they need rather than showing up and saying, here's what we're going to give you.
We're also going to all need to get behind state legislation because so that those families can be grandfathered in. It's one of the few Black communities where wealth was transferred, and we can't allow it to be disrupted now.
The state's got its own budget problems. Yeah. I know you traveled to Sacramento recently to try to ask for money, not only for this, but for other things as well. What are you hearing from the state in terms of getting more money for LA?
Well, first of all, as I mentioned before, and I know all of us would agree, the governor has been great. The governor has been great from day one. And I do believe that, and I talked to him a few days ago, that we will be able to get some resources from the state. The question is how much. We're waiting on pins and needles because the May revise comes out in a few days. But there's also the possibility of looking at getting resources that might later be reimbursed by FEMA, but could be reimbursed to the state instead of to the city, because I don't know about the county, but we're still working on FEMA reimbursement from COVID. And so the idea, considering the hundreds of millions of dollars this is, if the state could front us that money, that would go a long way.
There we go. Bureaucracy at work, baby.
That's my pitch.
Well, I think that's what I want to touch on that, though, because I think that's sort of in the zeitgeist right now. I know Ezra Klein's book has really been encouraging us to think about that.
Which is a really great book.
Cutting through the bureaucracy is important, but it's also about standing up something that works going forward.
Right.
And I think that we have to learn how to get out of our own way, and especially in Los Angeles, where we have all of these governmental agencies, we are at risk of tripping over each other if we don't identify sort of what the Army Corps is for the rebuild process.
So to that point of Ezra Klein's point, which is basically we get in our own way with 18,000 regulations. Things take way too long. California is a mess. It's way slower here than it is in other states. I love the concept of what we're trying to do, but it doesn't work in practice. So if we are rebuilding now, what's different now? What's a specific change of something that's different going forward that you want to see happen, that you can make happen as a member of the county board?
Actually, one of the most exciting directives from the Blue Ribbon Commission is standing up an entity that can work from a regional perspective on purchasing materials at scale, working at scale to bring down labor and materials cost. How do we make sure that we are working as a region to rebuild? Sunset Mesa is my example of that. Nearly 400 homes need to be rebuilt in that community at once. They came to us saying, we've already spoken with landscape and design architects to think about our community as a whole, use us as the literal model a city on a hill to sustainably rebuild, but also make sure that we do it in a way that we're moving quickly and getting people back into their community. Very rarely do you see a neighborhood actually invite and actively invite government in to help them. Their only requirement, though, was that we move quickly. So setting up a centralized agency that can continue to move quickly, as Army Corps did during the debris removal process, and work at a regional scale, not sort of separate entities all along. I think if we do that, then we're at risk of falling back to the bureaucracy that has held us back in the first place.
Right.
And I think that unity that we have found, even in the debris removal process, it wasn't enough for individual property owners to send in their right of entry form. They had to talk to all of their neighbors to figure out how they were going to work together, and that allowed it to move faster. That sometimes that collective mindset is the thing that is going to allow you to move, and that kind of community building will help us recover more quickly.
And you've
So
seen like
can-
block captains and
I was
and
just
other-
going to
and
say
other-
that.
right,
So,
in previous
so
disasters.
when the government can't move, philanthropy can. And so I think that that's what's happened in this, and this is the remarkable Los Angeles story that I was referring to. I mean, Department of Angels has done a great job about standing up block captains. I shouldn't be talking for you.
Explain what
Evan, but
block captains
Evan,
are.
you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah,
You're doing great. Come on.
yeah, yeah,
Your turn.
yeah.
Well, let me just say that in the Palisades, where it's highly organized, we absolutely have in a lot of different neighborhoods within the Palisades, and they are organized, and they do have a block captain, and the block captain is literally that individual that is in charge of that block in terms of talking to, communicating, and organizing their neighbors, and it's been extremely helpful.
Evan, I'm curious though, for you as somebody who was so innovative with technology in creating something that never existed, that became a thing around the whole world, and was able to think differently and create something that people hadn't been thinking about, how you see technology's role here, and how maybe the government, which doesn't always think of technology in the most creative ways, might be able to learn some lessons from people like you in the private sector.
Well, I think one of the things that we've done, hopefully helpfully for all of these block captains, is roll out digital tools. It's actually called Angel Central, and it allows block captain and community organizers to collaborate and work together, and also to understand what sort of coverage we have in the neighborhoods. Because I think there were a lot of block captain programs that had assumed that we had reached more folks who had been impacted than we actually had. And so I think, and I should be clear, that's a private digital tool for community organizers, because there's a lot of sensitivity around that information and around helping to organize folks for a community-centric recovery. So I think digital tools are going to be really important. But as I sort of like look at this and zoom out big picture, I think the thing that we really need to be talking about is the ratio between how much money we're spending on firefighting versus prevention. And I think if you look at the last several decades in our country, and this is not just LA specifically, but in our country, we've gotten very, very good at putting out fires. And as a result, we have forests that are full of fuels that have not been cleared for decades. And so we have, I think, in becoming so good with things like aerial firefighting, things like advanced detection with drones, become so good at putting out fires that we need to start thinking more about what prevention looks like so that we can avoid these sorts of catastrophes, especially in a climate that is changing, where I think it's likely that we may see more of these sorts of events if we don't invest more heavily in prevention.
On the technology front, Mayor, one thing a lot of people are asking questions about is the issue of permits. We see that over and over again in some of these questions coming in. You know, right now, the city has greenlit 3 rebuilding permits out of 7,000 destroyed. That's what this question says. When will you publish a daily, publicly accessible dashboard showing applicants received, permits issued, median processing time, staff assigned to it, a sort of tool technology-wise where people can track the permitting in real time?
Don't have a problem doing that, but let me just say that's not accurate. We have about 37 permits that have already gone through the process. And frankly, we have a couple of properties. I was at a property 3 weeks ago where they literally are rebuilding.
Yeah.
The construction crew was out there, and there are over
37 out of 7,000.
Well, yes, exactly. But let me just put it in perspective, because if you compare it to other fires that have taken place, they were nowhere near permits at this point in time. And so, granted, it's
We got
a
a
few.
bigger problem, though. That's the
Well,
challenge,
we
right?
do have a bigger problem, but the point is that we are months and months and months ahead of where other fires were. And I have to compare it to that because I think that that's the best comparison. So 37 properties that are already ready. If they want to start rebuilding tomorrow, they can. 1,300 properties that have been cleared, that when they are ready to submit their permits, they're ready as well. So having the dashboard is something that we're very open to. It hasn't been what we've been focused on right now, because what we're focused on is making sure that every family that is ready to rebuild has a green light to do that and gets to return home as soon as possible.
Supervisor, what about PCH? Because we know a lot of people get stuck in that traffic every single day. And Sunset. What are we looking at in terms of measurables of when we can get that back open for people?
Well, the governor has declared that PCH would be reopened, I believe, at the end of the month. But we, I will say,
partially reopened, though, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think what
one lane.
You know, what concerns me is if you have been on PCH recently, what is ongoing there. There's undergrounding of utility equipment. As I mentioned, there's assessment of those properties in Malibu that if they're going to be rebuilt, thinking about what other sort of infrastructure needs to be invested in. We were thinking about safety improvements to the PCH even before the fires, because the PCH itself on a good day is a problem. So there are challenges with the PCH as it is, and so we have been creative in some of our solutions. We have a beach bus in the best of times, where that beach bus has now become a critical lifeline for our Topanga community that can't drive in their individual cars down Topanga Canyon because of the closure there. So we're using our beach bus to get people from the valley to the beach, and to some of those wonderful destinations in Topanga to make sure their businesses stay open. And that connection to the PCH, we also opened back up our metro line that serves the Malibu area. So we're trying to get it back to as close to normal as we can, but that main artery serves so many functions right now, and itself has to be rebuilt, especially as we're clearing out those properties. Making sure we shore up the seawall to make sure there is a PCH to speak of is also important. Yeah. And so we have to work with our state partners at Caltrans and our other partners to make sure that we are deploying as innovative a solution as we can in the short term, while thinking about long-term investment that's unfortunately long overdue.
As we start to wind down in terms of time, I want to pick up the pace a little bit. So if we can do rapid fire around the horn, try to think of like a sentence or two, if you can, for the response to this. Let's start with this question. Supervisor Horvath, what's the biggest obstacle right now? Biggest challenge right now?
Being decentralized. I think the layers of government that people have to go through is the biggest challenge.
Cinny, the biggest obstacle.
I think we have to get that federal money, and we have to get that federal money this summer. At least some indication that that $39 billion, even if it comes in tranches, will come into this community to help the mayor and to help the supervisor and help the governor and help the citizens of this country.
Evan, biggest obstacle you're seeing right now?
I think this relates a bit to what the supervisor mentioned. I think coordination across our very complex layers of governance here in the city, whether it's the city, the county, of course, the state, the federal folks. I think we need a really great coordination between all those different parties, and of course the community, nonprofits, and all the other folks who care about LA, love it, and want to help us rebuild.
Mayor.
The insurance industry.
Take a beat on that one. That's more than a sentence.
Well, the insurance industry impacts everything. Number one, whether people will be properly compensated. Number two, whether or not they'll be able to rebuild. We started talking about the testing. That is a big issue, because the insurance industry says, well, if I'm going to insure you, is the property safe? So the insurance industry hits on every single level, and none of us can impact that industry. We can advocate, we can fight as much as we want to in Sacramento, but this is a national problem.
Are you satisfied with the insurance commissioner?
Well, and I don't put it on him.
Okay.
I mean, this is an industry problem, and it is national.
Around the horn on this question, what gives you the most hope right now?
What gives me the most hope is the resilience of the people and the collaboration in every way, just the spirit that has happened since the fires. The people in the Palisades and the people throughout the city that have been in support.
Evan.
Just the extraordinary care and love that this entire community has shown, and the incredible creative DNA of Los Angeles that I think is going to help us solve, the problems that lie ahead.
That we have the NBA All-Star Game, we have the World Cup, we have the Super Bowl, and we have the Olympics. We have a lot of coming out parties coming up. And we're going to show the rest of the world that we know how to do this, and we're going to recover, and it's going to be okay.
All right.
And the Milken Institute, we have to say thank you for having us, because my Uber driver could not say enough how much he has made so much money this week. I'm serious. Thanks to the Milken Institute.
Yeah,
so
baby.
driving
Surge
economic
pricing.
recovery. This is our
Capitalism
coming out
at work, right? Lindsey, what gives you the most hope? More than money than for Uber drivers. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that gives me the most hope is just that people keep showing up. People have given so much of themselves. I see people who have lost everything showing up for others. And so the endlessness of the giving that is happening in our region is really what inspires me to see how much people are willing to show up for each other.
And now, around the horn, we'll start with you and come backwards. We got an incredible audience here of a lot of wealthy, influential, powerful, interested people. What can they do to help?
Well, through our Blue Ribbon Commission, we've created this intersectional table, and that's the other place I find hope, leveraging public-private partnership. So please join us in the work of the Blue Ribbon Commission and making sure that we are able to bring it to life, and we're happy to talk with you more about that.
Yeah, and as we do this, if we can put up the slide of the different websites so people have a chance to write that down. These are different places to give. What do you want from this room, Cinny?
I just think we have a lot of people out here that have relationships in Washington that could be very helpful to the state of California. You have business relationships with members of the House Appropriations Committee. You have relationships with the White House. And California needs that $39 billion when that FEMA supplemental comes up in mid-June, Mayor, I think is the date for it now. So use those relationships, leverage them on behalf of California.
I've never needed a lobbyist, but if I did, I want to hire you.
Yeah, I'm not supposed to be lobbying as a 501c3.
Okay, sorry.
But I
don't
help
want me to get you in trouble. Evan, what do you want from this crowd?
We did hire lobbyists.
I know, exactly. We'll do it. Got my best.
If you want to get involved, if you've got an idea, if you're in one of these impacted communities and you need help, reach out to Department of Angels. We can connect you to the right opportunities. We can help make your voice heard. We're here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Mayor Bass.
Well, absolutely ditto to what all of my panelists said. And one of the things that we're doing in the city every month is we're doing citywide mobilizations called Shine LA, where we call on all of the residents to help get ready, because in 14 months the World Cup is coming, and we want to continue
and we got to get ready, of course, for the World Series coming in October.
Yeah, well, there you go, and we're going to win it again.
Yes. Yeah.
But really, to continue that spirit, the spirit of collaboration, of support, of solidarity, that would be a wonderful way to participate. And ditto to what Cinny said in terms of lobbying in Washington, but there's still lobbying in Sacramento that you can help us do as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, look, public service is hard. And it's a lot comes at you. And so credit for you for showing up, for being here, for taking the hard questions, and for being willing to engage. Credit to our philanthropy for stepping up when you didn't need to do this, and donating and volunteering your time to do this. And credit to this room for caring. This is a community-wide issue. This is one of the biggest challenges our region has ever faced. We need everybody here to come together to do it. We are seeing examples of that. Not all of it's perfect. We haven't been through something like this before, so we're learning lessons as we go, and we'll keep asking tough questions, but we will get through this working together. And so thank you to all of you for being here, and thank you for Milken for hosting this important conversation, and we're going to keep this conversation going for the years ahead. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.